Hello YouTube, I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, and on this channel, we answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answer they need from an employment attorney. Sorry, I'm moving around my windows so I can see the question. Okay, we have a question here from YouTube user Love Galore, who asked us, who asked me, the royal we, can you do a video about discrimination during the hiring process, please? Absolutely. Here we are. We're doing it. Okay, so let's define it first, right? Discrimination in the hiring process means that you are a member of a protected class. We have a video on the channel kind of listing off all the usual suspects for protected classes. Remember, there are more or fewer or different protected classes depending on where you are. Different states, different cities, different localities have different protected classes, but the federal protected classes exist in all 50 states across the country. So wherever you are might change which protected classes you are a member of. And if you are a member of a protected class, and if that is the reason why you are not given a job, right, or why you're not given an interview, or why you're not given a fair chance during the interview process or the application process or any of that, if your membership in a protected class is the reason why you're treated negatively, you experience a negative workplace consequence during the interview or the application process, then you have experienced discrimination in the hiring process. It's that simple, right? Now, people are going to say, well, that's oversimplified, Vince. No, that's what it is, right? You can take your facts and apply it to that framework, and that may be complex, right? There may be complex conversations about how or why we're arguing that you experienced a negative workplace consequence, or what the negative workplace consequence was, or why the employer might have chosen not that. Those things are all realities of a potential case. But when we're defining workplace discrimination in the hiring process, that's all there is. Membership in protected class, negative workplace consequence during the application or hiring process, the end. That's it. Those are the elements, okay? Now, there's going to be a little bit more to it because attorneys are going to be reluctant to take these cases. Why? There is a lot of risk in failure to hire cases. They are popularly called failure to hire cases. And I know some of the greasiest of the greasy attorneys. Attorneys who will take anything, who look at failure to hire case and say, I don't know. I'm not so sure about this one. Why? Okay. And just to be clear, I don't feel that way, right? Like if you have the evidence to prove failure to hire, that's a claim. That's a claim that should be brought, right? That has to be addressed. But many attorneys don't want to, and we'll get into why. So there's a million and one reasons why an employer might not hire a potential employee, right? As an employer myself, people do wild things. People throw their wet umbrella on the chairs in my conference room when they show up for interviews, and I'm like, yeah, is that how we're playing this? No job for you, right? I'm being facetious. I'm not at all being facetious. That's very rude. Don't do that. But the point is, there's so many reasons why you might not hire someone that it can be hard to pinpoint that the reason was discrimination in a given case, right? You need a very clear set of evidence to make that case viable and to make that case one that you believe is more likely than not to recover, right? Which is what most attorneys working primarily on a contingency are looking for, right? They need to believe the case will recover. It's very important, right? Whether they're fronting your expenses or covering your expenses or whatever's going on, even if you're paying the expenses and they're just putting in the labor, either way, they're investing a tremendous amount in your case, right? So they need to believe it's going to recover because they can't really afford to throw away that war chest or those labor hours, those attorney hours, whatever it is that they're investing in you and in your claim. They need to believe it's actually going to win, generally speaking. And listen, there's differences. You know, if an attorney is charging by the hour, they might not need to believe that at all. They just might need to believe that it's a colorable claim and that ethically they're allowed to bring the claim. And that's got nothing to do with whether the case is likely to win or lose. Just it's a very different standard, right? But that's a whole nother deal. We can talk about another video. assuming that an attorney is working on mostly a contingent basis, some kind of hybrid or a full contingency, whatever it is, they need to believe the case is going to win. And that's tough. So a lot of these attorneys are going to look at failure to hire case and say, listen, they interviewed 300 people for this job, and they hired one. And yes, it is entirely possible that discrimination is the reason why they didn't hire you. But there is also an infinite number of reasons as to why they might also not have hired you. And it's going to be hard for us to prove that the discrimination was the reason. It's detail driven. If the evidence is there, I say it's a claim, right? It's a claim whether the evidence is there or not if you believe it's discrimination, but is it a claim that I believe can win? Well, without the evidence, no, right? You need the evidence. You need a reason to believe that it was discrimination, and you need to be able to demonstrate that the discrimination was the reason you were not hired. So a lot of attorneys will not want to take those cases, and a lot of the attorneys who do take those cases will say things to you like, listen, very high risk claim, it's just not worth as much. Failure to hire cases are not worth that much. You should settle for pennies on the dollar. And normally I give attorneys a lot of pushback on that, and I do here as long as you have the evidence. But on the average failure to hire case, it probably is potentially worth pennies because it's really hard to prove that, right? It's a super high risk claim. Failure to hire can be really high risk unless, in your specific circumstances, you have the evidence to really demonstrate that this is discrimination, right? It's easy to show that discrimination probably was what went on here, but you need to do a little bit more than that, right? Like, we're not going to get into the evidentiary requirements, what you need to prove here. It's just an uphill battle, okay? Like, it's an uphill battle to prove that of all the reasons that you might have been hired, and all the reasons the other 299 people out of those 300 people weren't hired, for you it was discrimination, and maybe for everybody else it wasn't discrimination. That's tough. That's a tough fight. So the attorney is going to come to you and tell you, listen, high risk claim, you got to take what you can get in settlement. Frustrating. Just be aware of that. If you're bringing a failure to hire claim, be aware that it is high risk, that your evidentiary requirements when attorneys are looking at the case are going to be fairly high in terms of what they're looking for, and that many of the attorneys who do take on your case are immediately going to push you to settle for lower sums, right? Not all of them. Not all of them, right? Like, if listen, you've got a great attorney and the evidence is there, I say fight it out, go for the big win, like, by all means. Trust me, like, that is fully how I feel. But if they're taking a case with a lower amount of evidence on a failure to hire basis and its contingency, rest assured that attorney is going to be trying to settle that case at a much lower figure than perhaps you were hoping, because the risk would be immense on that claim. I hope this helps. If it does, like, subscribe, comment down below. Love galore. If this video fell short of your expectations, if I failed to answer your questions, please comment below. I will track those comments, and I will try to make you a follow-up. And remember, almost everybody works, but not everybody wins. Be smart out there.